Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Masha Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. On today's episode, Michelle and I are happy to be speaking with product leader and coach Chantal Botana about her workshop for testing product ideas. So let's go ahead and dive in. How you doing, Chantal?
Thank you for having me on the podcast, guys.
It's a pleasure having you. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Chantal. Welcome to the podcast. And you are joining us, even though you have an American accent, you're joining us all the way from?
I am joining you from Spain. I'm in Galicia, but I spread my time between Spain and DC.
Very nice, very nice. So maybe one day we'll come to visit you over there because I've heard it's very pretty.
That sounds great. And my business partner, Maurice McGinley, is Canadian, so maybe we can also come to Canada and Atlanta because
There we go.
I used to be based in Atlanta.
Nice, nice. So tell us first, let's start diving into it. We want to hear all about this workshop that it's also a free workshop, I believe, right? But before we get there, tell us a bit about yourself and how did you get to where you are in product management?
Yeah, I love this product management question because I feel like we're all accidental product managers, right? Like
It's the
the
best.
answer we get from everyone.
Yeah, it's the best.
I mean, there was no product management 101, university track back in my day. I know there is now, or at least there's, like a subset of
Inklings of
classes
it,
that
yeah.
you could do. Yeah.
Few of them.
Um, yeah, certainly. I mean, certainly for UX there is, but for product management, yeah, it just didn't exist, and it's still sort of up and coming. I stumbled my way into it. Really, I've been doing it for like 25 years now. It was around the time of the dot-com boom. I had been working in mostly the music industry in video production and producing. And so I was working at Sony Music Studios at the time in New York City. And there was this big buzz about, the internet. And, I thought, I'd like to do that. That sounds pretty interesting, but I don't want to start all over again. I was like, a few years into my career, I didn't want to start out at ground zero. So I decided, okay, I'm going to apply to a few jobs, see if anyone will give me a shot. Well, lucky for me, it turned out that all of these startups that were now high growth scale ups, they were growing so quickly, and their managers were like 23 and 24-year-olds who really just didn't want to manage. They were, too early in their career to want to be doing that, and they didn't know how to do it. So I got a job offer from this company called Star Media. They were the largest Hispanic portal. So think Yahoo, but Latin America, Spain, Portugal. So any Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking countries. And they were like, well, we don't care if you know nothing about this. We'll teach you everything you need to know, but we need you to be a manager. I said, okay, deal. I got there. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was like, until I hit that 3-month mark, I was like 1 foot out the door every other day. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. But after that 3-month mark, I hit my stride. I was like, okay, I got this. I can, I know how to produce video and music, so I can do this. I would say back in the day, it was more producing or project management.
Yes. Yes.
We've all been there in product. It
Yes.
was really extensive PRDs, like 50-page PRDs, and business cases that took like 6 months to write up and vet, etc. So I really am thankful those days are gone. But that was my start. And then the bust came, so I wasn't too long in that situation. And then I kind of went into sales dev at AOL after that. And then as soon as the market picked up again, I went straight back into being a product manager. I loved it. It was where I wanted to be.
But was it called product management back then, or was
It
it called other
was.
things?
No, it was I was the e-commerce product manager, and I had a
Oh,
few people reporting into me.
hmm.
1999, 2000. Yeah, it was called product management back then.
Very
But
nice.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah, super waterfall, right? Like, I was doing wireframes, writing up huge PRDs, saying exactly how everything functioned,
Yeah,
passed it on to the design team. They would then work on it for 3 months.
yeah,
Then it would get passed on to the engineers, and the engineers would be like, we can't do that.
yeah.
So, so you just wasted like six
Months
months
and
and it
months later.
blood, sweat, and tears. So I'm
True.
very glad those days are gone. But it,
Uh,
it all sort of like ramped up from there.
yeah.
And yeah, I guess fast forward to, so I've worked at really large enterprises. I like to think of that as kind of my sweet spot because I know how to incubate and innovate in those really big companies that just have lots of roadblocks to that. So I've worked at IBM, the Weather Channel. Sony was more on the music side, but I realized at a certain point in my career that every time I took a leadership role in product, I was spending at least the first year working on the ways of working, right? So getting my teams to collaborate more. So as a head of product, most people are hiring you aspirationally. They tell you, oh, we're this, we're that, we're agile, we're doing the product operating model. And you're like, oh, this is great. This is exactly where I want to be. And then you get in there and you're like, oh, yeah,
This is it.
okay. I don't know how I had the wool pulled over my eyes one more time. But I like that first year of like, let's figure out how we can do this a little bit better. It got to a
Especially if
point where
you're
I
in the
just decided,
position that you can do it and you're
Where you can
hired
make a
to do that.
change.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, good, like I was grateful that I was in that higher level position where I could say, hey, you know what? We're going to try to make a change. And here's why you would want to do that and why we as a company should want to do that. But I ended up loving that first year and a half or so much that I decided, I should just call spade spade. Let me just do this.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
started my own company, Product Evangelist Co. And yeah, I do it full time now. I help companies figure out how to do product discovery. If they need to reshape their organization, I can help with that as well. But and that's kind of, this is a good segue to how I came around to the product experiment garage with my business partner, Maurice McGinley.
Amazing. So tell us a bit about your passion for product experiments and where that came from, how you evolve into that created this product experimentation garage.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's actually a really cool story. So I had been working in New York at the Ladders, was a scale up at the time, and I ended up getting recruited to go to the Weather Channel in Atlanta. And the Weather Channel had just had all of the executives in product and tech and design had just had training with Marty Kagan. So they were, being they were being taught about the product operating model. I don't even think it was called that back then, but Marty was training them on how to be a more modern, agile software development company. And and I was their first hire for having the right mindset. So I was already in New York. I had been practicing Agile for a while. I'd worked in Kanban and Scrum and XP. And so I was their first hire. And I moved down to Atlanta because back then, so I had the option to stay in New York, but they said, you know, the big thing right now is that like you need to be co-located with your team.
That's what
And so
Marty Kagan is always promoting,
Yes.
especially
yes,
before COVID, but he was always talking about that.
absolutely, absolutely. And so, I was a big supporter of that. And I thought, you know what, I'm doing this. I'm moving to Atlanta. So
Hmm.
after 22 years in New York, I picked up, moved to Atlanta. And I don't regret a minute of that. Uh, and I helped the Weather Channel change their ways of working. It wasn't easy though. So to get to your experimentation part, so Marty had gone in, he had done some training, and he's the person that he left behind with us, and this gets me every time, was Jeff Patton. So he left Jeff
Mhm.
Patton with us and he wrote user story mapping. He wrote the book on user story mapping. So he left Jeff Patton behind for me and my teams to be able to ramp up a bunch of different, product squads within the organization. And so we started doing story mapping. We started experimenting. I was really big on let's try things. Let's do a Wizard of Oz test. Let's first and foremost talk to customers. It can't always just be a survey or an A/B test that's too far down the line or too far away from your customer. And so
Mhm.
that's where I actually really had the liberty to run with those kinds of experiments and teach the teams how to do that. And I
Yeah.
was learning at the same time as well. Just because I
Mhm.
had the right mindset didn't mean I had all the experience
Yeah.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
all of those kinds of experiments.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And
That's
just
important.
to be a bit clear about the word experimentation, because we talked about it here in the past. We had a series about A/B testing, and we talked with a lot of CROs that are doing experimentation, and that's the word they're using a lot of the times. But in their context, it's mostly about A/B testing and trying different things with the application with the users, of course, but when you have volume already and it's later on, it's not in the early days when you have to do things quickly and fast and try different things. So that's what we're talking about here today.
Generally speaking, when people are talking about experiments, they're thinking about things that are in production, right?
Hmm.
So A/B testing, multivariate testing, for me, that feels like you've already decided what you're building. And
Hmm.
what I want to get at with testing, and I still use the word experimenting, is way earlier on in that process.
Yeah,
It's have you even spoken to a customer? Are you might even be testing product market fit, but you haven't decided to go all in on a particular solution.
right,
Okay.
right.
So,
So it's
Okay.
not
and it's
That's
not, and it's also not like optimizing something that you've already got.
exactly.
okay. So you could be testing an idea. I mean, you could be doing ideation and just
Yes,
testing an idea with people, not a physical
exactly.
not a prototype, or you haven't actually started to create something.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, there's a great graphic for that. GIF Constable has this like curve for, what type of experiments you should use and when along that timeline. It's like the earlier you're testing an idea or validating your customer even or a business model, it should be really, really lightweight, right? It could be a paper sketch, it could be talking to
Hmm.
5 potential customers. And then you go further along the curve and you get higher and higher fidelity. So even a prototype is, if it's a high fidelity prototype, then that's way later in the process as well. So what can you do before all of those things?
Yeah. If you can find the link to that, we can also include it in the description of
Yeah,
the
I would love
episode.
to. I would love to.
Amazing. Amazing. So tell us about your garage and the workshop. What do you guys do there?
Great. Yeah. So it's called the Product Experiment Garage. Like I said, you could probably swap out product experiment for product testing, but it's a workshop and it depends on 4 healthy habits. And I like to call them habits, and Morris and I like to call them habits because we believe that we're framework agnostic, right? You could use Teresa Torres's opportunity solution tree. You could use Strategizer and David Bland's, testing business ideas. You could use Jeff Gothelf and Josh Seiden's lean product canvas. It doesn't matter. It's about where experimentation breaks down in most teams. So one of the premises that I work off of is that the teams have the knowledge and the industry insight. They're product managers, they know what they're doing, but sometimes they get stuck. And that's where frameworks help out, right? So, a lot of times leadership team comes in and says, we're going to be working this way now. And That's great. I believe in frameworks. I think that they're useful for scaling and for everybody to get on the same page and to have alignment. I can tell where people are getting the most stuck in that product discovery, no matter what framework you're using. And so the product experiment garage actually helps you get unstuck. So again, doesn't matter which framework you're using, we're agnostic. I would consider it a course correction rather than a transformation, right? It's tactical, not strategic, and it's radically time boxed. It's meant to happen very quickly in a month, not a year, maybe even a day, not a week. We have variations of it. But our free version of the product experiment garage is basically four things. We break down assumptions, right? So we're gonna do everything about assumptions. We're gonna break them down, we're gonna map them, we're gonna prioritize them. So you have to have assumptions. One of the mistakes that people make in that when they're talking about assumptions is that they come up with a single assumption for the entire solution. We want you to break it down into viability, feasibility, desirability, usability, and one by one test the riskiest assumptions, right? So that brings us to the next thing. So step one, assumptions. Step two, running and crafting and running small, smart experiments, right? And with those experiments, we know that people often forget to put their success criteria on them, right?
Yep.
They craft the experiment and they go ahead and run it, but they either struggle with the success criteria or they just don't want to put it on there at all, right? Because they think that it will, they won't like what they hear and then they're going to have to drop the idea. That's the gist of it, basically, right? Well, that's the point, right?
Yeah,
That's the
yeah, they
point.
don't want the validation or the
We're shaking our heads over here, but because we are so tuned into what Chantal is saying, right? But I guess it's not obvious for everyone.
No, it's time and time again, people are just confirming their own biases. They're doing these experiments and product discovery just to be able to keep pushing it through. Lots of times product discovery becomes a checklist like, oh, yep, I did it. I did my discovery and now I'm going to keep moving forward with the idea. That gets us to point number three. You need to extract insights from those experiments that you're running, assuming that they also have some success criteria on them as well. And you're going to extract those insights and actually learn from that. And then number four is you're actually going to make a decision. You need to make a tough call, whether you should kill, pivot, or persevere. Nobody is really carving out that time. I want to say religiously, and it should be like if you're going to run experiments, at the end of it, you need to have a kill, pivot, or persevere decision. And people aren't doing that. In my observation, it's more likely, that once again, they're just moving it through. They've checked it off the list. They've done the discovery. They're moving it forward.
Yeah, yeah.
As you go through this, I'm thinking of empowered product teams. I guess going back to Marty Kagan as well, like
Yep.
it definitely feels like the team has to be empowered to exercise this experimentation, and in order to kill something, they have to be empowered to kill it. And you're informed by the data, so you're going to
Yeah,
kill it. You're going to go to the stakeholders and say, "Hey, this is not a good idea because I have the data to prove it." But as
exactly.
we all know, stakeholders say, "Well, this was my idea, and maybe we go forward with it." So, I think that's part of it. You have to be empowered to do all this.
You really do. And I think I would say this, you can't be the lone wolf in all of this, right? But you could maybe try to carve out a little bit of time on the sidelines if you're not truly empowered yet, but you're trying to make that change. You
Hmm.
could try to carve out a bit of time. I think you should do it with a teammate or two and not be a total lone wolf. And give some of this stuff a try so that you get into the habit of being able to push back respectfully, right?
Hmm.
With evidence, even if that evidence is not statistically relevant. It's a signal. You're looking for a signal, something that allows you to become more confident in the choices that you're making because everything's an assumption and it's all about being more confident in the choices that you're making.
That's great.
Yeah. So tell us a bit how the workshop runs, because that's also an interesting way that you do that. I would love our audience to hear that.
Yeah, sure. And I can also share a link to a Miro board after the
Oh,
show.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, we've got a public version. You're more than welcome to try it out yourselves. But we also host a 60-minute free version of it where anyone can come along and pitch their idea. So the way that we do the product experiment garage is we start with everyone pitching their current product challenge. It could be kind of in the form of a problem statement. It could be a particular idea that you have. It could be a business model that you have, but you've got a few minutes to craft like an elevator pitch. We have everybody pitch for a couple of minutes, and then we vote so that we go deep on one thing. It's not realistic. We've experimented on our own experiment garage, and we've tried uh, taking everybody's challenge and giving 10 minutes to that to go through it. It just doesn't work. So where we landed out was that everyone gets to pitch, then we vote, and the challenge that seems the most interesting to
Mm-hmm.
fellow product experts, because anyone can come to these as long as you're in product or interested. Pitch it, vote it, and then take that one. You get another 10 minutes to go deeper in your pitch. So tell people, provide more context. Let us know where you're at, what you've tried, what you want to try. And then we do an assumptions mapping session. So everybody takes a few minutes to just write down whatever questions come to top of mind. We like to have people frame it as a we believe. So in order for this idea to be successful, we believe that this needs to be true, right? So we do the we believes. And people struggle with that. It's hard for people to write the we believe. People are just generally dropping a word or two. So we say, okay, let's take the time, guys.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take the time to start to frame this as a hypothesis, right? These aren't, you're not certain about any of this. You have a lot of assumptions. Write it as an assumption. Either what could cause your entire idea to fail, or what one assumption could cause your idea to fail, or what would need to be true in order for it to be successful, right? And this is stuff that like David Bland and Strategizer, do a lot. Jeff Gottelf as well. This is not anything new, but
Hmm.
we're trying to move people. Like we see this is where people struggle. And so mapping those assumptions and then prioritizing them. Everyone has a turn to move those assumptions over to the next stage, which is to prioritize them. And we do one of those tactics, where anybody can move each other's cards around. And that's because people have different opinions, right? So we give
Yeah.
it about like 2, 3 minutes. Anybody can move a card around. You want to put on a matrix, on a 2 by 2,
Mm.
in terms of certainty or confidence. So known, unknowns, and amount of risk and how important these things are. Like, do you believe this is important or less important? Do you have
Mm.
more confidence or less confidence? And you move it around until you get kind of a hierarchy of which is the one that's the biggest risk,
Yeah.
or which few are the biggest risks. And then from that point, we allow the person whose idea it is, right? The person who won the votes
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, I agree with this one, or this one's the most important thing for me to fix right now. So we want to be focused, because we're not going to run all 20 different experiments. We're going to pick one assumption, come up with a few experiments on that, right? And so we take that person gets to pick the assumption, and then we go into crafting experiments. So then each of us writes a few things. We talk through all of those, and in the end, the person whose idea it was and whose problem it was gets to decide what's the riskiest assumption and which experiment they would like to walk away and try when they leave the session.
Does that person get to come back and present the results?
So we have a Slack community where
Yeah.
anybody can go and share their results. It's, I mean, like most communities, it can be a little bit quiet in there,
Yeah.
but we definitely stay in touch with, so Morris and I definitely stay in touch with the folks who participate. And in fact, we have a lot of folks who come every single month. We were doing it bi-weekly at one point, and then we dropped it down to monthly. But there's a few folks in there that are there every single time. And you know why? Because they feel like they don't have a team. They're
Mm.
not set up as a
Mm,
product squad, or they're not set up as a, as a cross-functional, highly collaborative team. It's
Hmm.
more like, hey, you product manager, go do this on your own. And they were their team at the end of the
mm,
day, and they love it.
yeah.
And so they're coming back.
And they also learn from other people experiments and
Yeah.
problems. So,
100%.
That's what I'm thinking, like
100%.
muscle memory, because the more they participate, the more they're there. Even if you don't have yours chosen at that time, you become stronger along the way just by participating.
Absolutely, because it's peer to peer, right? So you can come if you're an engineer, a data scientist, in product design, product manager, QA. You can come and share what assumptions you have. And the more diversity, the better, because the
Hmm.
yeah.
more different functions we have in there, the better the questions are. And I think that in the day and age of AI, what we still offer as human beings is critical thinking and the quality of the questions that we ask, right?
Mm,
Because you can use AI all you want, but if you're not asking the right question, bad question, bad answer, I guess. Or
Hmm.
stupid question, stupid answer. Or there's no stupid questions, but you know what I mean? Like that's the one thing that we have right now. It's not the
yeah.
only thing, but it's critical thinking and the
Yeah.
quality of our questions.
Can you think about a case where you had an experiment that came up in one of those sessions, and then the owner went and tested it, and the result that came out of that were crucial for the success of their product?
Oh, interesting. Now, sometimes they're not coming back and telling us like,
Right.
oh, it failed and I had to junk this whole thing. But
Right.
I will say this, I have done these internally with big corporate clients, and I was working with one team at a very large e-commerce global brand, and the team ran a quick, they went into their store, and they spoke to sales associates for the first time ever, and they were building for those sales associates, so those, they were the customer in this sense. And they had, come up with this whole process based on how they believed an associate used the equipment that they were providing.
Hmm.
And they ditched the idea at the end of it. So I was so proud of them, because they went in and they spoke to the sales associates, and they realized that, wow, we were about to build something that was not going to be useful for the associates at all, and their job was to make them successful. And they, in the space of 2 weeks, they were able to quickly, you might think 2 weeks is a long time, but in corporate America, I'm sorry, it is not. It is really rapid fire.
Hmm.
So they came up with something. They talked through all the different dependencies and possibilities. They didn't build anything. They quickly sketched something. They went and talked, and then they threw it away.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it was a
Nice,
really proud moment for me.
nice, nice,
And they
amazing.
felt good about it,
Yeah, they
right?
saved a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's it. It's nobody's thinking about the opportunity costs and the cost of doing business, right?
Hmm.
Every time everyone's so worried about what are our developers going to do?
Hmm.
They can't be talking to customers like,
Yeah.
they need to be coding all the time. No,
Hmm.
actually, if you're all, to the best of your ability, you don't have to have the full team. I love it when a full team participates, but let's be realistic. Take a trio, get out there, learn something, debrief, share it with the team. That's where things start to fall apart if there's no debrief, if there's not that shared understanding as you move it forward.
Yeah. And maybe again, in the age of AI, this is an opportunity where the developers can use AI to write the code, but then they should use more of their time to sit with the users and to understand what user actually wants and what they need. So, because I had a few discussions in the last few weeks with people about would AI replace developers? And this is actually an interesting use case there. Not that it's going to replace them, but it's going to allow them more time to actually do these things that are so important.
And I think that applies to product and
Hmm.
design,
Absolutely.
engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, right? So let's take the productivity aspect of it. We'll keep the critical thinking for ourselves, and we'll let the AI do the boring stuff, so to
yeah,
speak. Well,
yeah.
I don't know if people, I'm not saying that coding's boring, but if from a product perspective, if I never write another PRD and a user
It's
story again,
those
I'd
kind
be
of
very
things.
happy.
Those kind of things. Yeah. So you can spend more time talking to customers and
Yeah.
stakeholders and stuff like
Exactly.
that,
The
working
stuff
on
that really
Amazing.
matters.
yeah,
Yeah.
that stuff
That's the
impacts.
work. That's the
Yeah.
work now, right?
Right.
I get a little bit frustrated when I hear teams say, I don't have time for that. But it's the real work, actually.
Yeah.
Like writing a user story is is it's something that might need to get done, but it's not the real work.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just creating the artifact. But yeah, it does take
Yeah,
up time, and that's where hopefully AI can come in and help
exactly.
alleviate that. And then you can work with your squad and your team and bring in engineering. Because I found that like when you bring engineering in, it encourages them to build and create. Where they're not siloed
Yes,
off and you're prescribing things to them like, hey, I talked to a user, this is what they said. They have firsthand knowledge and they have more investment in the solution, and even bringing them to sales and such. Like, hey, how are we going to sell this? How's this going to go to market? How's this going to make impact on the company? Like that,
absolutely.
getting them involved at that level, it really, I think, is an advantage of an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that Marty loves to say this as well, that engineers are creatives. If
Yeah,
you're not using them beyond, you know, pixels, then
yeah,
you're losing at least 50% of their value.
for sure. And they're going to see things that product managers aren't. I mean, so there's just
Yep.
levels of understanding different scenarios and different experiences. We've all come from different backgrounds and different experiences, and they're going to see things and notice things that maybe you're not. So having them ride along with you is an extreme advantage.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and the ride along is so critical. There's nothing like seeing something not working or seeing your customer frustrated.
Hmm. That's right.
Mhm.
You got to see it firsthand.
Yeah, that's it.
So where can people find and join the Product Experiment Garage?
So we are on Eventbrite and it's product-garage.eventbrite.com, but we can share that URL on the landing page, right?
Yes, please.
But yes, we're monthly. We're typically the third Thursday of the month, but sometimes holidays and other stuff changes that schedule. Wednesday, April 9th. That is our next one.
April
Wednesday, April
9th.
9th.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Amazing. And what time of the day do you do it?
So we do it at 5 p.m. Central European time. So we like to catch at least the East Coast
Yep.
in the US, and we catch the UK at 4 o'clock.
Okay, amazing. And we were talking about engineers, so most of our listeners are product people. If you have an engineer that you think should experience this type of experimentation, bring them on. Send them to the event. Come with them.
Yes, please. And you know what? The more people you bring from your team, you can kind of ensure that your topic is chosen, right? Because you can put all of your votes on your own
Oh, there you
Yes,
go.
stuff.
Stack
that's
that.
a
Stack
good
it.
point. That's a
Stack it in
good
your.
point.
That's
So
good.
you can
That's a
game
little.
the
That's
system.
a little
Yes.
hack. Yeah. Very
Amazing. Well,
good.
we'll see how
Hey.
many teams will come out to the show,
Yeah.
to the workshop.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. I love that.
And the next time we're actually doing one for Product Calgary very soon. We're going to do
Oh,
a private version. Well, anyone that's part of Product Calgary
mhm.
can join in, and that one is on April 4th. But I think it's sold out. So
Mhm.
the The thing is, these things are getting pretty popular. We try to keep it to a relatively small number. I think that will be one of our larger versions of it. 40 people we capped it at.
Mm,
Normally, we like to keep it at about 20.
Okay.
And the ones that we do monthly, it's typically a pretty small crew, which actually makes it pretty valuable as well.
right, right. So you
Like
might cap
around
it.
10.
So you might cap it at the number of people as well eventually.
Well, yeah, because we don't want it to get unruly. We like to have everybody have the opportunity
Yeah.
to share
Participate.
their
Right.
assumptions, share their potential experiment,
Yeah.
and the more people you have in the room, the harder it gets to do. But we're also going to be doing it live. We do it live every once in a while as well. We're
Yeah.
doing it live at Product Weekend in Porto
Yeah.
in May.
Ah, okay. Amazing.
That's very cool.
Amazing.
And you mentioned earlier, so I think you mentioned go to market earlier, but the ideas can range from the ideation phase all the way up to go to market as well. Because
Yeah,
working in go to market, making sure that's right. Like you can build the best thing in the
yeah,
world, but if you don't launch it correctly, it can fall flat. So it
absolutely.
sounds
I
like you
mean,
can bring that in.
and any department could really use this. It doesn't actually even have to be for product, right? So I recently gave a talk about transformations that stick, and anybody could use it. If you're changing something in your personal life, if you're changing something at work, if you're in marketing, whatever department you're in, it really doesn't matter. There are some habits that you should just uh, do to make sure to increase your confidence in succeeding.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. My last question to you is about other tools. Do you have any other tools that you love that for product people that you would recommend people to try?
Yes, and actually, I have a free resource guide that I can give you the link for as well. We rely heavily on the work of Strategizer and David Bland. So they've got test cards in there, their canvases that they use. Also, Jeff Gottelf and Josh Seiden, the Lean. It used to be called the Lean UX Canvas. It's now called the Lean Product Canvas. They have a Lean strategy as well. So depending upon what phase you're in. Oh, and by the way, David Bland has, if you have a paid account of ChatGPT, so ChatGPT 4.0, you can use his assumptions GPT and his experiments GPT.
Hmm.
So if you want to figure out, you need help with your assumptions. So going back to like feeling like a lone soldier, a lone wolf, you don't have anybody to support you. You do. David's got a GPT and it's fantastic. So you can at least get back. It's like a sparring partner, right? So you
Yeah.
might have some assumptions, but you want to double check it. You want to make sure you haven't missed something. Throw it into Assumptions GPT. Then you want to figure out how to experiment on that riskiest assumption. Throw it into Experiments GPT. It's fantastic.
Amazing, amazing. Yes, do send us also the links for those
Yeah,
because we can include all of that in the description.
fantastic.
Great. Matt, do you have any other questions for Chantal?
One last question would be, having done this experimentation workshop with a bunch of different product people, engineering people, what's your greatest takeaway having done all this?
I think that people want to collaborate. Now, that's not any like, you know, rocket science, I'm not,
Yeah.
some people are feeling either lonely,
Hmm.
but they want to collaborate, but it's often hard to do it within their organizations. Sometimes, and I want to say, sometimes the product leaders really believe and they really have empowered the teams, but the teams themselves, their minds get in the way of running, off and trying these things. I've seen it both ways. Or other times they're truly not empowered. And so they're looking for people to help them out. So this is a great group
Hmm.
of practitioners. These are your peers. Bring your challenges. We'll help you out. But on the other end, if you're a product leader and you really believe that you've empowered your teams, but the teams have the knowledge, but they're just getting in their own
Stuck.
ways,
Yeah.
right? They're getting stuck or they think that they need to ask for permission. There's got to be something culturally going on in that organization where the leader believes that they've empowered the teams and the teams just are too afraid to do anything, there's something going on there. Also, we can help out in that scenario as well. You can bring us in. We do radically time boxed versions of the product experiment garage in-house as well.
Okay, so we talked a lot about the free version, but you also
Yep.
have versions that you can bring into organizations. Amazing.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And I would say the key differentiator for us is that we need buy-in from both sides of the ecosystem. It can't just be that the leaders want the teams to do this. It can't just be that the teams want the leaders to allow them to do this. There has to be buy-in on both sides. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Mm. Amazing. Where can people reach out to you?
You can find me at Chantal at Product Evangelist Co, not com, co. That's also my website, productevangelist.co. And I'm on LinkedIn under C Botana.
Amazing.
Wonderful. Well, Chantal, thank you so much for joining us today. This is very helpful, and hopefully all of our listeners can join in and participate. And Moshe, thank you as always. Thank you to all the listeners, and we'll talk to everybody next time.
Thanks so much, Matt and Moshe, for having me on the show.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chantal.
Take care. Thank you to all the listeners. We really appreciate the feedback and support. Please leave us a review to help others find the show on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you're listening to the show.